Every day I'm hustling, 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 every day I'm hustling.
Hello and welcome. You are listening to the Hustle Points NBA show. I am your unranked teeth of the game, Rudy St. Clair, and joining me today is the one, the only, Emio Tomeoni, a STREAMY nominated NBA storyteller. How you doing today, Emio?
Doing great. Really loving this midnight edition here.
Oh yeah, we're out here podcasting in the dark, the end of the days, not
Yeah.
the usual high morning, early afternoon energy going on here. High morning, is that a thing? Whatever.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Yeah.
It very much is.
Yep. People can find you, of course, on your YouTube and on Twitter at Mr. Tomeoni, and searching the NBA Storyteller. And if you want to know a little bit about behind the scenes, you can go to patreon.com/the NBA Storyteller. And
That's a great place.
yeah, learn where the hell you've been forever.
And like every other month,
where
I
the
don't
info
even
is.
charge. I don't even charge like every other month.
That's true.
Shut the whole cost down. So who knows what's going to happen on the first? Who knows?
Yep.
Get involved.
Yeah, it's always a dice roll just to see,
I mean, at the same time, maybe I'll go a month without posting either. So it's really
yeah, it's a give and take relationship. So on your Patreon, you have the rewards of the Leroy merch to be sent out spring 2019. How's the taking down Leroy merch situation going for you?
So there's this place that I live, and it's I'm tucked neatly between like reality and just jokes, right? Non-reality thing, a whole plane of existence that just isn't even real, right? And then sometimes they just crash into each other. And sometimes I'll sell myself so deeply into the false reality or the narratives that I'm trying to build. I'm trying to create reality out of. Sometimes they just take a hard left and they become reality. So there's a long story to Leroy Smith. He is Michael Jordan's muse, the man who, quote unquote, took his spot from Laney High School varsity squad. And since that was the day that Michael Jordan decided he was going to be the greatest basketball player ever, when Leroy Smith took his spot on the varsity team. And ever since then, he's never forgotten that man, and he will never let Leroy forget who he is. And every chance he gets, he rubs it in. But meanwhile, he sure takes advantage of that name a lot. Michael Jordan uses the name Leroy Smith quite a bit. They even released a campaign. It was like a phony campaign or a parody where Charlie Murphy played Leroy Smith, right? And he did this whole motivational commercial as Leroy Smith. And they even released a Leroy Smith sneaker. And I don't even know if it was real. It looks like they did make a couple of them. But my thought is that you can't just live off of somebody's name like that. You can't just put somebody's real name on your marketing campaign, even if it's just jokes. And even beyond jokes, Nike's done numerous campaigns just pimping out that story of Michael Jordan getting cut at Laney High School for Leroy Smith. You heard that name so much, I figure either Leroy is getting paid every time they use his name, or Michael Jordan and the Nike Corporation or your Jordan brand outright own it. Maybe they just bought Leroy's name. So here I come, and I just want to know. I just want some sort of confirmation, because Leroy is off the grid. And if anybody's going to find him, I will. But in the meantime, I went ahead and designed a whole line of Leroy Smith merchandise on my Teespring site, connected to the NBA Storyteller YouTube page right below there. I had some great images with Leroy from high school. I blur out his face. I had abstract pictures of whales with the name Leroy across it. I was really going for this, and I even speaking to my wife about this. She saw the vision. Leroy could have been something. This line of Leroy. So I tweeted it out. I said, "Hey Nike, look at me. I got a Leroy line too, you know." And just hours after I dropped that tweet, the entire line disappeared. It was all pulled from my Teespring site. Mind you, Teespring had already approved all of these shirts when I designed them, because I designed them quite a while ago. I just hadn't really made them available. So that company already approved these shirts. And it wasn't until I tweeted it out when somebody had a second look and took the whole thing down. Now I can't even, they're not only aren't they even available, because you can make something that it's not available, they just took the whole product, the whole design. I can't even find the design in my archives. It's ridiculous. And I feel like this is the first shot. I feel like this is the beginning. So you're here at the beginning of this. I don't know what my next step is, but I know it's going to be, I know who it's going to be directed at.
Yeah, last time you were on Hustle Points, we talked about the end a lot. I guess this is the beginning now,
huh? 2 months ago, I was winding down. The reason I was winding down is because I'd said a lot. I didn't know if I had a lot more new things to say. I mean, basically, I make 5 videos. I just keep making them over and over again from different perspectives. But I felt like the channel might be done. You know, the end was here. And I thought I had a little good wrap up to it. But then it's kind of like, I don't know, the system wasn't ready for it to be over. And, you know, whether it's Leroy or just a couple of interesting little partnerships that I have coming up, it is definitely not the end. This is part 2 or chapter 3 or something, but it's definitely not the end anymore. And that's beyond me. This wasn't some sort of stunt. This was actually going to be the end. But some things just aren't in your hands. It's just not my decision. It's not your decision sometimes. You just got to be open to the people who are making the decisions. You got to hear it. So anyway, yeah, that's where we are now.
Yeah, I mean, I guess no matter how little it is really in your hands, there is always going to be something new to say. I mean, it's easy to feel like you're running out of things to say in a lot of ways, a lot of the time. But I feel like no matter what, ultimately, you or anybody else is going to develop new perspectives, new ideas, new things to say. Sort of part of the fun of this whole thing of living life on Earth here, you know, is just getting to uncover new experiences and develop new ideas and whatnot. It sort of seems like something you're bound to forever. So
well, you know,
I don't think the end is real.
That is exactly right. You're so spot on. And I'm gonna use this podcast recording, midnight session, as my my therapy for the month. So that's part of it. It's that it necessarily wasn't that I maybe was finished saying things. It's just I found that forcing it wasn't working, and trying to make it a formula has not really worked. And the only way it worked was to just respond when I had an organic idea. And I'm fine with doing that, but then the ideas got thin, and not really the ideas got thin. I just started having different ideas. And the actual idea, and I guess it's being pushed off a little further, was I was going to start a whole new channel. And I wasn't going to necessarily tell anybody. I was just going to start a new channel and see if that could do something, if I can grow that into something. I actually did start the channel. There is another channel out there that has my content. And one day soon, I actually have 3 videos that I produced that I'm just going to post up there. And maybe I'll tell somebody, maybe I won't. We'll see what happens. It's not about basketball, though I do talk about basketball because that's one of the ways I found that I can express myself, which is weird. You probably understand that. Just the idea that it's a means of communication. There's so many ways to communicate life through basketball. I don't think you can ever just give that up. Hmm. It's a whole it's an art form that people don't even know they're participating in. One of my failed projects was the full length documentary film on being called Fanatic, which is it just in shambles. It's just in pieces everywhere. And I got close to actually having it as a single thing, even though I was going to release it on Rudy's suggestion in 15 separate parts. But it just it just never got there. And part of the reason was I had a big vision for it, and I needed to speak with people. There were very particular people in and around the game of basketball, not even necessarily celebrities, that I just need to speak to finish these things. And I thought, since nobody responds to me, since I've got no pull in the game yet, um, that I could just fill it in with more me, but it didn't work. I need these other voices to complete the concepts. So that's something that may happen in the future. The other part to that, and just to go on a little bit of a side note here, it's all about opportunity, right? I there I have a roundabout opportunity, and this is if everything lines up perfectly. I mean, like inexplicably perfectly, inconceivably perfectly. I might have a chance to pitch some stuff to get to Netflix and actually produce some stuff that might get funded and then published on Netflix. And I don't think it's the craziest thing. I think there's a lot of crap on Netflix, but
Oh yeah,
um,
for
I
sure.
think that not only somebody paying for it to get made, and then it having a home and a place to be released, that's a big that's a big step. I think. My goal has always been to get my documentaries on HBO, um, but who knows? Who
Yeah, I mean
cares?
Netflix has been trying to become HBO for the
Right.
last 5 6 years. So I mean it's really the same goal.
So
It's just
through
a
this
different
little
brand.
Oh, right. So through this partnership that one of my two partnerships, I have a fun little partnership that I'm going to do. It's a creative content production partnership deal with The Athletic, where I'm going to mine through their articles and make content inspired by their articles, and then we'll kind of, I guess, cross promote each other. That's something that'll be happening. But then there's another organization that I'm working with that does have that direct connection to Netflix that I'm really, really trying to hustle. Yes, all hustles intended. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. I know this isn't just. I'm not just whip. Yeah, I'm not just making this one up right now. This isn't. This isn't Leroy before Leroy actually came into my life. This is. Yeah, they rang me up the other day and pitched this idea. Um, I don't. Whenever they pitch these ideas, I'm sure they've spoken with other people about it. I don't. Who knows? But I always feel like I'm the only person that matters at that time, so it feels special. But in these situations, they instead of just putting an ad, a lot of these companies they just want to put a 30-second ad in the front of your video. They want to produce content together, and I'll use their fancy little graphics or whatever, their little logos to help promote my junk. Um, and uh, I got access. They even gave me my own subscription so I can read their articles for once.
I mean, I would hope so. Could you imagine? It's like, yeah, we'll
I
work
do.
with you. Only if you subscribe to The Athletic, though. We'll give you
It was
40% off.
close, man. I really had to ask though for it.
It's like, just so you guys know,
So
I don't already pay for your service.
yeah, like I love your headlines, guys. I've been pissed.
I've been
plenty of
told you have
times trying
plenty
to get to
of
'em.
top-notch writers on your staff.
So, and that's the other part of it. With that, they said they would make available some of the writers of the articles, people who were actually involved in writing articles. So I think that's just the kind of inspiration or base level push that I think can get me to do something on a regular
Mhm.
basis. Just a wealth of interesting approaches to stories because they do interesting stories. I wish I had a couple of headlines with me right now, but they do things that when I'm scrolling through Twitter, I want to click on, and I click on these articles hoping that there's no paywall every single time, or that there's some limited time freebie that they're going to give me. Um, but it's never the case. But now I get to go through all that stuff and just be inspired, and it's and with the explicit task of taking their idea and obviously putting my own spin on it. And that's something I've kind of shied away from. Not that I think the whole idea, if somebody's done an idea that you can't do it, or that, if two NBA YouTubers put out a video about the same topic the same week, one of them's always like, hey, I didn't just do this because the other guy did it. Nobody owns an idea. None of these people own an idea. I think it's ridiculous to ever even have to make that
Right, you have a
admission
whole video about
or
this, and in the end of it,
I
you
do. You're
list
right.
off like 137 free ideas or some gross number like that.
Yeah. Yes, I do have. Thank you for you reminded me. I did everything I'm saying. This is the point. I only make 5 videos, or I just keep making it over and over again. So that this is the idea that I'm finally going to let myself do that, because even though I promoted or I encouraged people to do that, I wouldn't do it, and I felt like I had to approach these ideas from a real personal place or some very particular place that I felt like only I was seeing. Um, but that's obviously not the case. Everybody's, there are real new ideas. It's just kind of how you talk about it, how you articulate it, and how you decide to tell it,
Right.
right? So with these 400 and some odd writers that they have on, paid writers that they have, I'm sure there's 6 articles that are just screaming my name, just perfectly tailored for me to go off on. And that's and it again, it's not just a retelling of their article. It's going to be me putting my own spin on the topic and using their article as basically my baseline of information, as my research. Because unlike a lot of what I do, I assume the Athletic and their editorial process requires research and confirmation of numbers and years and spellings. So that's that's all the heavy lifting right there.
Right. I think you had some sort of statistical claim on one of your videos most recently where like you went through year by year after you said like this such and such has happened in X amount of years, and you went through and year by year was like, I'm right. Not about this though. I'm right. And this year I forgot about two. I'm right.
Oh, that was it was about, I think, the free agency. It was something
Yes, that's what
about
it
these
was.
kids, like
Yeah.
the 2000
Mhm.
something free agency having there's a representation from that free agency class in every championship for the past 20 something years, except for like 3 of them or 4 of them or something like that.
Yeah, that's what it was. Now, when you put that up, actually, I'm glad you brought that up and remember which video I was talking about. When you put that out, you said something along the lines of like, "I'm not sure if I'm allowed to put this up yet." What was that originally for then?
That whole video was commissioned by,
I'm hustling.
and it was theirs. It was all theirs. They basically sent me a check for it, but I didn't cash their check because right when we were about to have our little deal, which was going to be, they were starting, and this is what I really don't know if I can talk about this,
I'll just
but they were
I'll
starting
bleep out the
some.
name in the edit.
Oh, yeah, you know what? Thank you. Yeah, exactly. Bleep that thing out. So they were starting something. It was going to involve some content creators, and they were going to put content out regularly, and then they gave me a topic, and they really wanted like a 7-8 minute video, like they even told me, and I made a 15-minute video. Here's the funny. They asked me to make a video on a most important free agency class, and they wanted it to be short, like I said, like 7 or 8 minutes. So then here's what I did. This is actually what I did. I made a 15-minute video about my favorite draft class because I didn't read their email twice. I didn't double check what they wanted the topic to be on. So I made a 15-minute video about the 2013 draft class, I believe. And, or is it 2013, I believe. Yeah. And I loved it. I loved this video. I sent it to them, and when I sent it to them, that's when I read the email again because I was replying to the last email, and I said, well, I guess I didn't do what you guys asked, but here's a video if you want it. And I said, do you want to just take this, or do you want me to do the original idea? And at that point, I really didn't have, there wasn't a friendly voice over there yet. It was just some person who was just trying to get through the day. And they just said, do the original topic. And I was like, okay, all right, well, that was an exercise. And then I did do a video on free agency, a year of free agency. And I made a 42-minute video on that. So I gave that to them, and I said, sorry, I just couldn't really stop. And they loved it. But then right around then, that thing happens at companies that happens. It's, when people at the top have different visions, and then they want to fire people. They call it restructuring. You know that, when companies restructure. So this company had to go through restructuring right as this whole thing was getting settled between us. And people got fired. They changed departments around. They developed a whole new creative department and creative strategies. And the entire thing that I was going to be a part of didn't exist anymore. But luckily, there was a person there who was involved in all this kind of back and forth, who loved my stuff, and he made it through the restructuring. And I went in about 2 weeks ago and had a meeting because they are close and we're working out another deal. So besides the Athletic, which is a sure thing, I've working with this original group again to try and produce some decent content. And here's the goal: the Athletic, this mystery company, or anybody else, all it is a big old hustle until somebody agrees to pay for my Leroy documentary.
Right. I mean, that's the Netflix dream, right? It's just the Leroy documentary. That's the only one who's willing to step up and go against Nike. Them or
That's it.
I mean, the Athletic might be willing to do it. They got all that venture capitalist money. I mean, all those subscribers.
Somebody in there, they do. They actually might. Are they even profitable? They might be profitable.
No
Nobody's
way, no
profitable.
No.
Nobody's profitable. Somebody's got to be willing to take that fight on. I mean, it's not, I know it's powerful. I know, going against Jordan and Nike is a big deal. Not that we're going against them. I'm just trying to tell a real story of these people. It's not like a whole nation going against China or something. It's like you're just going against Michael Jordan. It's kind of like the China of America. I don't know.
Yeah, that'll be the big soundbite of it. Yeah. Michael Jordan is the China of America.
So that's I mean, really, but that's kind of, listen, if you slander Michael Jordan, he really does act like China. I mean, I think he just ended the Barkley relationship after Barkley said, he wasn't a good owner or something like that. He just canceled that entire relationship. He remembers shit, and he will eliminate you from the system if you say one thing about him, and he remembers it all. He really does. He really embodies that whole spirit. That's amazing. Yeah,
that's scary accurate. The more you explain it, the more I'm frightened.
I'm going to talk about this in the future. I have to do this. See, this is one of those moments, it's going to go in the documentary. So, yeah. If anybody's listening to this who has any power, the Atlantic, you're in the running. That other company, you're in the running. I am producing it already. It already is happening. Like little bits of pieces. I'm recording little things, ideas, and whenever I am doing research, I'll talk through it and record little segments and things. I'm going to get all the material ready before I actually get out and do the real stunts, like showing up to Leroy's front door, showing up to Michael Jordan's property, hopefully being able to get kicked out, because that's what you want in one of these documentaries, is that dramatic scene, getting kicked off the property, somebody shoving their hand in the camera. Roger. Yeah. That's okay. I think I said enough about that Athletic deal there.
So I feel like it would be pretty easy to scale your style of video to the traditional format of like a narration-free documentary, even where you just intercut varying visual elements on top of the audio of various interviews. Like that narration-free doc style, because most of the stuff you make now is like heavily founded on narration. But simultaneously, I feel like if you just had even a hunch of an idea of the narrative structure around this, and you interviewed the right half dozen people, you wouldn't even have to like have a bona fide script. You could just, create the story in the edit.
That's it. Nail on the head. Absolutely. That's the goal. If you have something, if you can make that type of documentary. I'm not saying that people who include narration don't have something, but usually it's because you don't have it. You didn't get it. You didn't get the interview. You didn't get the right voice to tell the backstory. But that is the goal. I mean, that's what I've attempted to do before. I've dreamt of it. I've done two or three videos on the channel that don't have any narration. They're just sights and sounds. Uh, but that is exactly the style I want to go for. In telling these larger stories, just letting them hang out there, just letting them tell themselves, and just being. I really don't want to force anybody into one particular idea. I really want to just put information out there and let people love and hate who they choose to love and hate. But obviously everything has bias. Every cut, every edit has bias. It's it's what I want.
Yeah, I mean, the idea
But
of a bias-free perspective is completely incoherent as far as I'm concerned. When people say they don't want bias in their entertainment, media, news, what the fuck ever, when people appear to come out against the whole idea of someone being biased, I always think it's just completely fucking silly, quite frankly, because all it's really messaging to the person like me who doesn't believe that it's even possible to have a perspective without bias. I think perspective is based on bias. What you're telling me when you say you want something without bias is that you want something that you agree with. Nothing more, nothing less.
yeah, nothing that you have to that makes you think twice. Because if you
Exactly.
think twice, then you're processing something that you weren't prepared or thinking of, that you weren't ready for, or there was no groove in your brain already worked out for it. And then you are instantly aware of another person or another perspective. So then yeah, you register it as bias, which is just stupid. It is it's so it's ridiculous, especially in sports when people talk about that. Like that whole idea, and you see it as such as one of the worst replies, you know, in on Twitter, in comment sections, on videos, whatever it is, when somebody like, "Well, you're biased," like, or "You're a something something fan, so you're biased." It just makes me want to just flush the conversation down the toilet. It just wants me to shut. I want to just shut it all down. I don't know how to communicate that in a tweet. But the rage it makes me feel that means nothing. What you're saying means nothing. It doesn't mean anything to the conversation. Telling me that I'm biased or somebody is biased means it adds nothing. You're taking this conversation nowhere. So anyway, I mean, obviously some people speak from the perspective as a wishful fan. They speak in terms of what they want to happen or how they want things to be. But that's very obvious. But when people are just talking about player versus player or storyline versus storyline, and then you just try to negate an entire perspective by calling them biased, again, like you said, uh, it is, I don't know what you said. Stupid? What'd you say? You said you had a perfect word for it, but I forgot what you said.
It's just like,
Just,
I mean, I think used the word incoherent to
yes,
because
absolutely.
it's
Yes.
just like that's what a perspective is a bias. We all have our individual semi unique perspectives that you could just slap your name on. I have a Rudy based bias, you have an Emio based bias. It's like we're all biased by nature, by whatever it is that we already fucking think it is.
I like the Rudy. It sounded good. A Rudy bias. A Rudy based bias. Yeah, it sounded like it almost sounds like a thing. Like like it exists.
Yeah.
It's just a standard Rudy based bias. Rudy
Yeah.
based. Yeah.
That's gonna be my drug inspired non basketball podcast, Rudy based bias.
Rudy based. That's a drug inspired. Not okay. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah,
And I'll be a guest on that too. Hopefully.
naturally.
Um,
It'll be like Between Two Ferns, but it'll be hoops. But there'll be no hoops discussed.
have you seen the full length movie Between Two Ferns
Oh,
on
it's
Netflix?
amazing. Oh,
Yeah,
I
it was
love
pretty
it
good.
so much. I watched it maybe like 2-3 weeks ago.
Hmm.
Whoo, man. It was my friend wasn't really into it until like the start of the third act.
It took a second. I mean, I was into it just by out of the concept. Like they had me for the length of the whole thing. Just the second I clicked on it, I was going to stick it out.
Hmm.
But figuring out what its actual perspective was, it took a second. I didn't know how self-aware it was going to be right out of the gate, and I loved it once you realize how self-aware it was. How
It almost
like
felt
it,
like it was like doing world building for like a real life talk show, because like
yes,
the Between Two Ferns is like it's fucking real. You know what I mean? It's
yeah,
it's not like scripted content, but Zach Galifianakis is doing a character. It's the Between Two Ferns host that is Zach Galifianakis, but like that's just
right,
his humor. But then when you put this film behind it, it completely recontextualizes all of his work.
exactly, and I appreciated that so much. I mean, one of the most jarring parts of it was I don't know if you stayed till you saw the little bloopers at the end.
Ooh, no, I don't think I did. Nope.
Oh yeah, they and I. It's something I've always wanted to see, but gosh, maybe I wish I didn't see it. They had outtakes from the interviews where they would break. Zach
Hmm.
would break, or because they couldn't keep a straight face during these interviews, and it's like there's this extra layer of reality that just or curtain that just gets lifted after all that film of just building that whole world where you're like, this is all it's all real. Like even Will Ferrell, he's playing Will Ferrell in there, but it's it's a character, but he's playing Will Ferrell, and so much of it is true. His role in it and who he is in the relationship to the actual show, but it's all just kind of dialed up. But yeah, seeing the outtakes of the actual Between Two Ferns show, this celebrity guest, he starts laughing for real.
Hmm.
That was it was it broke the spell a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
I,
but I enjoyed it.
yeah. I think I saw just like the smallest number of those. Like I think I saw like one or two, and then we cut it off because as soon as you said,
Ah,
outtakes from the interviews, I was like, oh yeah, that sounds way too familiar for me not to have seen it just a little bit at least. The way I remember is it kind of feeling like getting to see like the raw uncut footage from rather than like bloopers per se because I can't imagine they like ran that for a second take and I was like no, don't break this time, this needs to be a continuous shot. It's like no, they just edit that out, and it's like the Eric Andre show where they
no,
do
but
like
that's what they
2 hours
did.
interview and then just whittle it down to like a really awkward 30 minutes or whatever.
I've heard that about the Eric Andre show, and I really, God, I'd love to see the full thing. If those things are really that long, it's insane. But with the Between Two Ferns, that's how it ran. It was like they'd stop and they'd redo a take as if it was really that much scripted, and that was what was really weird about it. It felt, I don't know, that noticing that maybe it's not the case for everybody, but I mean, obviously there's questions and stuff that they edit out, but there were certain parts where he would laugh and then he'd bring it back to the top and try to get through it again. I mean, I guess if you got a good joke, you got a good joke.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Let me ask you this. How's it feel being Streamy nominated now? Get some bona fide industry recognition for your work now, not just a bunch of NBA nerds.
when you're in like clubs or school, there's all these subgroups or subcategories, or like you have kids. I got a couple of little ones, and they played little league, and they were in a tournament. There's all these opportunities to win awards or trophies throughout your life. And depending on where you are, there's all these small little worlds that you live in for short periods of time where you can collect your trophies, you know? And then there's this point where you just are dropped into the full world. And then the only trophies that are out there or awards are like the legitimate ones, like the big ones that everybody can get, like a Nobel Peace Prize, like, that kind of stuff. A an Oscar, obviously it's a film award, but if you wanted to go into film, you could do it. But there's these ones that are just available to anybody who wants to go for it. You don't have to be 8 years old at a camp at Yosemite in the summer of 1982 to get the medal. It's just available, and I figured I basically reached the end of my awards. Um, But I got notification a week ago, 1 week ago, 3 days ago, one of those things, that I was officially a finalist, a nominee for a good old YouTube STREAMY Award. And let me tell you, I don't know if it's a big thing, but it seems to be the only legitimate recognized award for YouTube. And if that's the case, then that's damn significant to me. The other part is, it just always felt like, doing my little research and looking back at past winners, a prerequisite is that you had to be established. You had to have millions, at least 1 million subscribers, and be one of those guys, one of those regular names that somehow just exist out there in order to win one of these things. But I threw my hat in the ring. I think that's the saying, the hat in the ring. About a year ago or whatever it was, 6-7 months ago, when these they were taking applications. And I just threw it in, and I linked to my page, and checked off a few boxes, and called it a night until last week. And I got all the fancy emails and some Streamy's graphics with my channel name on it, and their tickets to the Beverly Hills Awards in Beverly Hills on December 13th. And I think I got a real shot at this. I mean, we're rolling with a category. It's a sports category. 5 channels. Every other channel has at least 2.5 million subscribers. We are hanging strong at 54,000. And I don't see why on earth they would bring me to this to lose. I don't understand. It's impossible. I don't get it. Do you see why would they invite me to this thing or nominate me to lose? Why?
Yeah.
Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. I mean, you do tend to get people to really get hooked on your content, when they do see it, whenever it finds their way to them. I know you just put out that information the other day on Twitter about how around half the people who watch your videos are subscribed, and then you were implying in your tweet that was a relatively low number. But then MJ2K All Day turned around and replied and showed you how it was something like 99 or 98% of the people that watch his videos aren't subscribed. So I mean, that is definitely something.
Yeah,
there was some
was
really good information there. Don't exactly know how to break it down and analyze it precisely. There's probably lots of different ways to inform ideas based on those little bits of information there. But I think it's favorable towards you regardless.
I mean, I'm just it's what I tell myself, but it's what I tell my wife. Like, I definitely have told I have one kid who's making memories, and the other one's a little too young. But the one of them, I definitely told him, and he's fully aware of YouTube. And I said, Daddy's about to win a YouTube award. He says, "Oh, wow."
That's awesome.
Oh yeah, that's all. That's it. Like, that's all. That I want to even bring him to the awards, but I literally got an email 30 minutes before we started recording this from the person handling the tickets, and she said, "So you're trying to bring? Let me get this clear. You're trying to bring your son to this?" She goes, "Well, some of the content may be a little more PG-13, and then also there's going to be a lot of alcohol served. So you can bring him, but you definitely want to chaperone him all night. Don't let him free." So I don't know if he's actually going to come or not. I think it'll just be a little mom and dad thing. We'll just go out there, drop the kids off somewhere. But I wanted him to be
back
there.
Alley.
Yeah. Maybe right outside. You can just stand outside there with the fans.
Just like tie him to a bike rack.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, put a little cup right in front of him, with the dollar sign. See if he can
hand him a ukulele. See what happens.
Just see if he has the will to learn how to play ukulele. Just
he come back out. He's a fully grown Jason Mraz.
Yep. Oh yeah. That's how they did it, man. That's all our parents did it, right? Like
Right.
that's it. Got tied to bike racks. Uh, so yeah, the streamies. People ask where can I vote or how can I support it? There's nothing. You can't do anything for me now. It's all over. It's all in their hands, whoever they are. And I am counting on the fact that whoever decided that I should be one of the nominees, one of the 5 finalists, um, really likes the channel.
Surely. I mean, it's the only thing that makes sense.
It is. There's no reason because I'm telling you, the other ones are big shots, and they seem almost as like the default. Or okay, we got to fill out this sports category. All right, let's pick this one and this one. I don't even know who half of them are. One guy, I went on his channel, and the last video he posted was, I spent a week with Antonio Brown. And I'm just like, what? Like, that's, how do you get that? Does that mean I can have that access now? Like, I want to spend a week. Like, can I spend a week with him? Like, is that,
Yep.
is
Maybe you can
is
finally
that
get
what you
those
gotta
Leroy
do?
connects now. This is what's going to
This
open
is
those
what I'm
doors
saying.
for you.
All I want is a Leroy connect. I need Leroy. I need Randy Brown.
Yeah.
If I could
Well,
speak to
Randy
those
Brown
two
definitely exists, so I feel like that's possible. We don't know about Leroy.
You know anybody? Anybody you might know Randy Brown?
No. I know like 7 people.
Okay. That's good. All right. Okay. Well, just in case it turns to 8 people, just, let me know.
Yeah, the next person I bump into is going to be Randy Brown.
It's going to be Randy Brown. That's it. At the bus stop. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about the whole thing that inspired your appearance on this podcast is the whole China debacle, China LeBron, that whole situation, Daryl Morey or Morey, however you want to pronounce it.
It's Maury,
A
right?
week ago, yeah,
Maury.
some pretty strong thoughts, and I think that just based on reading your tweets, I don't know how many of my tweets you've read. I haven't really tweeted that much about it, other than maybe just a couple overly thorough arguments with people on Twitter, which
Right,
a
right.
very good way to spend my time. I actually believe that. I said it like it was sarcastic because that's how most people feel, but I do sincerely believe it's a fine and good use of my time. But I think we're kind of on different sides of this. Like I think we might be in the same quadrant on whatever 2-dimensional spectrum
Right.
exists on this matter. But I think we're not quite on the same page though. So I'm curious. What are your thoughts? You said
our dots
you were
are
burning
placed
with
differently.
what you could talk about, like as if it would be endless. But you're telling me before we started recording that now you kind of ironed it out.
Well, I've been. Sometimes I don't pay attention to what anybody else has to say in depth on topics. I just until I get a chance to just get it out. But I did encounter enough people, thoughtful people, and realize that what I'm thinking and feeling isn't. It's. I feel like people are coming around to a more well-rounded understanding of how this all went down and how to not just hate people because of any of this and not just and it's not and I'm not even I can't say the word cancel culture on a podcast. I think that's just it's too cliche. Like that's the thing. Like let's talk about cancel culture on this podcast.
We're not stooping to that level.
No. But it's not about cancel culture. It's about people putting people in boxes. I think it's the idea that because a person acted or did a particular thing on a Tuesday, now they are a particular type of person forever and in perpetuity and retroactively. They are now this person. It's kind of like the whole MVP thing. I think I laid this out the other day in some video. Oh, it's on the Amino app. I did a 1-minute video on the Amino app. That's another deal I have when I'm working out. I do 1-minute videos on the Amino app. Go ahead and download that. Find me, the NBA Storyteller. I don't know how you download it or find me, but just do it. Anyway, so the video I was talking about is the whole idea about day one of the new NBA season. This new NBA season, 2019, day one, opening night. Who is the MVP? The NBA MVP. Who is it? Who's the NBA MVP? Who do you think it is, Rudy?
Giannis.
Right. You think so, right?
You would think.
Day one of the 2019-2020 season, the Toronto Raptors are the current NBA champions, and Giannis is the NBA MVP until he's dethroned, right? But that's not how the MVP works. Unlike the championship, where you are dethroned on the last day of the season or you repeat, and you can now take ownership of that trophy that was only handed out on that last day of the season. You only become the champion that last day. The MVP is a retroactive award. And once you win it, you will now be the MVP for that entire season throughout history. So when we look back at the 2019 season in the year 2025, we'll never say that Giannis was the MVP on day one because we will know who the MVP is. But we don't know who it is now, even though it's already determined to be somebody. And it's not going to be the Giannis or the incarnation of Giannis that we are projecting now. Does that make any sense?
No, yeah, I see what you're saying. It's
It's
not
yeah.
it's not an award you defend. Your reign of MVP ends as soon as you get the trophy.
The MVP was the season that already happened, and your name gets written on top of those days retroactively. Like you now go back throughout history, and when you're writing the story of that season, the previous season, you can say this was Giannis's year, but he has zero claim to this new year. But whose is it, right? Well, we'll find out at the end of the year. And it's kind of nuts because you want to have an MVP. You want to be able to say these things and you want to act like there's a reigning MVP, but there's a reigning MVP until there's not because all of that history will be erased. Giannis will have no claim. Let's say Steph gets it this year, Giannis will have zero claim to this year. All the times we've mentioned him, we'll have to basically erase that because he will have no claim to this year anymore because since day one, it will have always been Steph. We just didn't know it. Point is, that's not how the rest of the world works. If you screw up or say something inartful or don't want to participate in something on one day, it doesn't rewrite your entire history and you don't become something new or you don't become something that is now determined and say that you were always this one thing. And you got people like LeBron and even James Harden and all these other people. And somehow Daryl Morey's just, I guess, a saint or something, at least, I don't know, to some people. People are trying to make LeBron into something that he's not. They're trying to make him they're trying to pit the things he's doing now against all the stuff that he's accomplished. It's already in the books. All the good that he's already done is good. It's already been good and it's already done. And you can't take that stuff away. And you have to be able to weigh that when you're making your assessments of who he is. And people calling him a sellout and they're saying, oh, well, when the money's involved, he's going to do this or whatever it is. And it's just never that simple. I really see it as, at this point, Daryl, I'm just going to call him Daryl. Daryl really should have just waited. And whatever program he was watching that afternoon, whatever he was doing, scrolling on Twitter and putting his little opinion out there, he should have just waited. We literally had players going to, or were they already in China at that point in time.
Yeah, they were already in China, LeBron James included.
And this is what I feel about LeBron. LeBron never took the full step back to appreciate the bigger issues here, the actual human rights issues, right? And he just kept it personal. And he was and seems to be mainly upset about the conduct and the position that he and his teammates and people, mind you, not just players, not just a bunch of millionaires, because you're like, people, I've seen this too, because they say, oh well, we were in danger out there, you don't want to put us in a dangerous situation out there since while we're in the country. You know what, not everybody who is out there on behalf of the NBA is a millionaire. Not everybody out there has means. There's a lot of lower level staff and people and production and ball boys or whatever it is, anybody else. There's people who aren't millionaires who are also out there and also represent the NBA and may not have the connections to waltz out of China just as easily. So yeah, when you say people might have been in danger, yeah, maybe there were. Maybe LeBron might not have been, but there were more people than just LeBron out there. But I feel like he took it personal. He took that interaction personal, and he basically kept his feelings on that personal level and never rose to the higher discussion. And I don't blame him for that. I don't blame him for that at all. I don't think it's on him. I think the man speaks on things that he knows. And the other part that I see over and over again is this whole idea that, oh yeah, well they said they didn't know much about it. Oh, I can't speak on it because I don't know all the details. Well, go Google it. Go find out about it. Oh, and even for a point, I was thinking, yeah, well, ask them a week later, and they should be able to say something different. You know what? It's not on them. It's not. It's not on the NBA players to be the arbiter of what's right and wrong in China. It seems so uh, cheap and contrived to put that on the back of these players when there's a whole system of actual decision making and control and money, layers of money above them or in offices that should really be answering the questions, if anybody really cared beyond a soundbite. But what people just wanted was the soundbite and the opportunity to either call somebody a hero or call somebody a villain. They wanted people to be, and this goes all the way into Hong Kong itself. I mean, I was reading somewhere there that there were protesters who were anticipating, looking forward to hearing what LeBron had to say, because they anticipated him actually sticking up for them and coming out on the side, of what's right. And that's a tough spot to be in, man. And they say, well, yeah, he's spoken out against Trump and he's campaigned for Hillary and he's spoken out against police brutality and all these things. And now he does this. Now well, you know what? That's kind of how people work. Is it a problem that he didn't come put together a better statement? Something that could have appeased all sides? Yeah. He's got enough people and professionals around him, at least he should, where somebody should have just snapped him out of it and said, hey, just say this, this will work. I mean, it seems like I think Steph got out of it pretty clean. Even Steve Kerr, he got a little flack for acting like he didn't know much about it, but he got out pretty clean. It's funny. No, James Harden is catching I feel like he's getting residual flack because didn't he just come out and flat out apologize to China?
Yeah, he was like, we love China, we love everything about China. But like, I mean, I don't think anybody who's being honest about it really thinks that he's talking about the Chinese government. He's not
But
talking
that's
about the
it.
Communist Chinese Party.
That is exactly it. These guys have a very particular, and this is the other part. These guys have a very crafted, orchestrated experience with this country. They go in these performance groups and they see what they're allowed to see. They see a bunch of fans who adore them and they have this experience that is a completely it's completely crafted, but it's a different experience, and they are having this firsthand. And a lot of these players have had this experience in China, and I feel like saying something simple like, oh yeah, China, great, it's great, whatever, especially from James Harden perspective, it's not far fetched. It's not a crazy thing to say, but we all want them to have a worldly perspective and some sort of bigger, um, just higher morality beyond their own world and what they've seen. But then that's the whole reason. That's the whole reason that LeBron James has been involved in anything. He speaks on stuff that he sees, that he's aware of. Activism that he has actually acted in is stuff that's been touched his life or been close to his life. And I bet if he took a stop off in Hong Kong, or he actually met some protesters or met some people that have been affected or extradited back to China, and all this particular stuff, then I bet he would have a slightly more evolved perspective. But assuming that our basketball players are going to have the default higher morality and perspective at any given moment, it's just not fair. It's not fair. It's not his money he's messing around with. It's the 15th man, It's the guy on the social media team that is only able to be hired because all that extra Chinese money. There's a lot of people in the NBA who aren't millionaires, who rely on the money that comes in. And when you're LeBron James or whomever, you're not just speaking for yourself. And even I'm talking about this. Maybe you could have crafted some sort of way to appease everybody. Even that's weaselly. Even that's a weaselly thing to do, because the ultimate goal is to say something and not upset the Chinese, but also wink wink to the rest of humanity and say, I got your back. I know what's right, but then at the same time, not a fit. Like what? It's all some level of weaselly behavior, and it's irresponsible of one individual who is a willing participant in this wink wink relationship with China to just put him on blast completely like unaware, which is Daryl. And it just seems like that Twitter activism is one. It's not like has he been doing something? Has he been actually supporting the protests or the cause in any particular manner outside of his thumbs? I don't think Daryl Morey should be getting all that much credit for tweeting something. He really didn't take that much of a stand. He did the literal least possible. And I think that in that manner, where he's not even putting his physical body out there on the line or in support of something, feel like that's where you can say, you know what, maybe your little thumb activism, your little twitchy thumbs there could have waited a week if you just would have just paid attention to what's going on in your business. Obviously, we all know what's right and what's wrong and who's being the complete jerks here. We get it. We all get it. So I don't know why we all can't have that kind of same winky wink behavior, and we have to act disingenuous half the time when we're evaluating these people. We know the dance some of these players have to do, and they know it. And we just get to act like there's not multiple things that they're juggling. And then these thousands of people can just say money. Oh, it's the money. Oh, it's the money. You know what? Sometimes it's the money. Sometimes it's the access. Sometimes it's the influence. And to be able to shut down potentially an entire nation, or 1/6 of the Earth's population from your sport by acting a little reckless, I don't think it's really a good idea to just completely kamikaze that entire deal and just completely say, screw China, they're effing everything up. There's no point. We can have our discussion, we can wink, we can know without completely blowing it up. When at the same exact time, every major corporation in this country is having the same exact winky winky deal. We all have the same deal, but we all wanted to be disingenuous around the same time and act like, well, LeBron James is the only person out there who's condoning any of this behavior. Anyway, okay, I think I said a lot there.
No, yeah, and you're being totally fair too. First off, I definitely agree that Daryl Morey should have waited a week because it is irresponsible to do that sort of that anti-Chinese government tweeting when the NBA has their feet on the ground in China. I think that's just silly irresponsible. Given being able to just sort of being a slacktivist myself, it's easy to send off, a tweet and feel righteous about it. It's harder to take action in general, but when you're and someone as high of social standing as Daryl Morey, and when I say social standing, I really mean just economic standing more than anything else. He has the means to do some sort of meaningful support beyond that, of course. And so to see that even somebody with that sort of power is capable of just doing the thoughtless retweet of oh, this looks like a generally good thing, I agree with this retweet, is very humanizing, and I understand that element of it especially. But for LeBron to be so just completely unaware of the surface level potential hypocrisy happening with him talking about Daryl being misinformed and not caring about people in danger and like that, not being aware enough as he's shown a track record of being, as far as like understanding how the media is going to take his messaging, because he's been in the brightest spotlight of the media since he was like fucking 15 years old or whatever. You know what I mean? He speaks the language of the press talking to him. I think you have like either a whole video or a segment about just that whole concept in and of itself. Actually, I think it's a tucked away in that Michael Jordan best angle you never saw video, talking about how LeBron interacts with the media. He's very literate, very aware of these things, and so for him to bother to make a comment at all while also not being informed enough on the topic to really say something that feels crafted is surprising at best. And I can't think of really the most appropriate worst adjective. But I think the worst real consequence of LeBron deciding to say exactly what he did is that he put himself in a position for all these people who were telling him to shut up and dribble 6 months ago or what the fuck ever, to then double back and practice a little bit of intellectual freedom, if you will, and be, hypocrites in and of themselves by calling LeBron a hypocrite for not wanting to speak up for the oppression in Hong Kong when they were saying themselves that he doesn't need to speak up on anything. The worst thing that comes from LeBron's comments is how he enabled people who, are probably racist or just really fucking dumb in not liking LeBron, to have a reason to hate LeBron for not for siding with Asian people. It's like you want LeBron to shut up and dribble, or do you want LeBron to take a stand for those who are oppressed? Why does it matter which people it is that you're going to support? He put himself in a position where he can be a leading story on fucking Tucker Carlson's program. It's absolutely ridiculous. And I think he should know better than to say something that can be so misconstrued, gather so much negative press, paint him in such a light for some people's perspectives, that he should know better to either just lie and say the NBA is not going to let me say much on this, so I can't really say anything at all, or just simply no comment his way, until him and his team did craft some sort of, hyper specific messaging that either tried to appease both sides or to, dance around whatever message he needs to dance around in like a wink, wink, nudge, nudge way. It was just so surprising to see him stumble so hard in his comments to the media, both in real time and in his tweets that he made to follow up. I felt like the only thing that came of those tweets really was that he really tried to cover his ass in saying that he was not talking about the practices of any government in his comments. He was talking about the practices of Daryl Morey specifically. But even then, when people bring up this whole situation, it's still at least a little bit telling, like you said, about how he never really took it from a perspective beyond his own, never zoomed out and saw the macro of it. And that the first thing that comes to mind when people ask him about this whole China situation is to come out and put Daryl Morey on blast.
Right.
Like that's thing number one that comes to mind. And so while there's lots of things that we're on the same page on here, I think the biggest thing that distances our opinion is that I think LeBron has set himself up to have that standard held to him, to where the Tucker Carlsons of the world almost have a little bit of a point. It's like, sure, they're being hypocrites themselves and bringing up LeBron's hypocrisy, but they are pointing out LeBron's hypocrisy nonetheless.
I can't disagree with anything, because you're, number one, a reasonable a reasonable person, and I don't think you subscribe to disingenuous analysis, which is just roles. We all play these little roles, right?
Of
Where
course.
we see something and then we say, okay, this is my opportunity to call somebody out here. This is the role I can play right now. Just like you said, the people who were saying shut up and dribble, they see this little window now where they can say, oh, well, I thought you were the something something guy. You get to blah blah blah. When we all know what's pulling on all the sides of this. We all know the issues here. I don't see how, and this is the case in. There was some situation I could have made a really good comparison to, but the point is, if we all know who the players are and what the people want, why can't we accept when somebody is playing the game that we all know everybody's involved in? We have to fall into our roles. And I think, like you said, part of it is because there's a lot of assholes and racist people, or just dummies or opportunists, who are going to jump into their little disingenuous roles and vilify somebody. And you know what? They have power. They do have weight. They are able to shift narratives, and then just pester people into, people who want to defend LeBron, people who are interested in keeping his name clean or keeping him in a positive light. Like now people just, sometimes it's me, sometimes it's not. We have to argue with these people. You can't just ignore all this stuff all the time. So it's just the burden of having to argue this stuff. But something that LeBron did, and you mentioned it perfectly, which was his reaction was to go right at Daryl. But this is right on brand for LeBron. Everything else that he involves himself in is in his view. He stays local, right? These are the things that he involves himself in, are the things that are right in front of him. What has happened is those things that are right in front of him have also become national issues. Even when he was campaigning for Hillary, he's doing that in his backyard. He's doing that locally. And I've always thought that was a double-edged sword, not only just being anti-Trump and, pro, not horrible people. And then also the other side of it was that the owner of that team was all in on Trump and using the whole, the Cleveland Cube, what's that guy's name? Dan Gilbert, for Trump fundraisers and stuff like that. So I always felt like this was also being brought into his backyard, uh, that whole issue there. So once again, it's right in front of him. So when this happened, for him to immediately address it in a personal manner, like, what about Daryl? Like, are you gonna find that guy? Like, that's on brand. It's what's right in front of him, and it's actually pretty damn consistent. If you're trying to find consistency in somebody, the man deals with what is right in front of him, and maybe that's something to be respected. People talk about staying in your lane, and there's good and bad reasons to. There's good reasons to stay in your lane, and there's reasons you should never stay in your lane. But when you're trying to be an athlete, right, and also do good in the world, some of the best things you can do are just deal with the things that you know. Don't overextend yourself. And it just got to be such a hot button issue, such a hot issue, and so convenient. The NBA and then these celebrities. And of course, the NBA now has the biggest celebrities in sports, right? The most recognizable people. Because it's not like they're running around to the NFL asking people, or I don't know, the Major League Baseball, who they have deals. Don't they have deals for players and stuff? I feel like all these leagues have some sort of relationship. They're not running around to these people. They didn't start running around to all the actual politicians who developed and craft our actual policy and getting them, every single one of them, on the record. They weren't doing that. They're all running to LeBron James. And at the same time, where I wish that he would have had something more crafted, something a little more polished, all that is doing is saying, I wish he would have played the game a little better. I don't even feel like I'm being genuine when I say that. Him just disregarding it and just playing it in what's in his front yard, which is the Daryl issue, and how the NBA, his actual job and bosses and people handle these things, because Daryl screwed something up at work. I feel like that's what he does. And the fact that he's stuck to that kind of shows me that he's being the guy that he always is. I'll deal with that issue that's right in front of me. If something that's big and worldly and national actually ends up right in front of me, like I said, if he actually had more exposure or something like that, he might have the interest or the time or the just the will to be out there and buck the system, right, or go against the position of the NBA. But he's just everyday LeBron dealing with what's in front of him. He's that's who that guy is. So I almost appreciate it in its consistency. Yeah, the tweets and stuff, like trying to clean it up, then you ought to, but what is that? He's just playing the game, and then we all get mad about how good or bad did he play the game. And we're all disingenuous about what we want to consider and not consider as playing the game. That's all it is. We all know that when Steph said his piece, he just really didn't want to get involved in it. So he's like, you know what? I don't really know much to talk about it right now, blah, 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 blah. And we're like, yeah, okay, sure. But we all knew it. We knew what he was saying. We get the point.
Yeah, and when you bring up you brought up a little bit earlier about Steve Kerr. You said Steph. It kind of reminded me a little bit about this, but how he basically said, I don't know enough about this to really make a comment. And then people did come back, a few days later and ask again, and he followed it up with an analogy to how people over there don't comment on our problems per se. And for that point in and of itself, sure, whatever. But the real thing I want to talk about regarding that is how much can we reasonably expect people to inform themselves in general, whether it be Steve Kerr, LeBron James, Stephen Curry, you, me, or whoever the fuck else. Like to say, oh, well, I need to have a better understanding of this topic in order to answer it. I feel like having that sort of perspective on anything that's an intimidatingly complex or important or both topic is one that leads itself into sort of dogmatic centrism, where you sort of live in this middle zone of, the wink, wink, nudge, nudge, even when you're not really being aware of it, where you want to take the, the good things about both sides that are like, effectively, consequentially, and in reality, mutually exclusive things, right?
Hmm.
Like appeasing China comes with basically being signing off on the genocide of Muslim people over there, or the generally fascist tendencies that the government practices, right? Or specifically that, this topic and is all started on is this particular law that has caused such an uproar in China to not China, excuse me, to Hong Kong, of China trying to suppress their free speech through this law that's been proposed. And I can't help but feel like with LeBron specifically, it's entirely fair to not expect him to become, suddenly some uber literate historian on the relationship between Hong Kong and China, right? No one expects that of him or of Steve Kerr. But I can't help but feel like, based on the morals that he's attached to his brand, you talk about being on brand, and I see the consistencies that you're talking about when you say that. But when I hear on brand, I think of the ideas that he stands for. This man of the people, this Muhammad Ali esque of our age, right? And so I can't help but think that if LeBron was in any way exposed to the knowledge of the whole conflict between Hong Kong and China right now, that he would, if not right away, eventually, hopefully in a time frame of which it's still significant and matters in any way, would come out and be less eager to say something that could come off as being pro China, and really make a pretty clear pro Hong Kong message. I feel like that's more on brand for him if he was going to comment on this at all. So that's the real thing when I say I'm upset with him not saying something more measured. It's less about, oh, I wish he said something that would have been more forgettable and appeasing to both sides. What I'm really saying is, like, in an ideal world, just for me, in my vision of who I think LeBron is, I feel like if he were to say anything other than no comment, it would have been something that's pro Hong Kong. And so to have that sort of expectation, like you were saying, some people in Hong Kong expected LeBron to come out and side with them, and to see him come out and talk about Daryl Morey instead is a little bit more disappointing than just like him not playing the game of subtleties correctly, and more like, wow, this is shocking because it doesn't seem like the person I thought I've gotten to know.
How much does it matter about LeBron or in any individual players' actual experience in China in terms of shaping their uh, or at least fueling their passion to be involved in this issue? Let's say, you know, China Clay, he's been going there for years, or any of these players who have these great, relationships with the people, uh, and there is even business in China, um, if they are having a firsthand experience that's overall positive and good, especially because they're actually meeting the people, how do you think that weighs in real life in their perspective on this? I mean, I still think that if it all comes down to it, we're all thinking the same thing, that we all get who the bad guy here is. Even LeBron should get it if somebody sat him down and talked to him about it. But the fact that I've never had a good experience. I can categorize China in, in a couple quick sentences about how I feel about the whole damn nation based on how I feel about their government, right? But if I'd spent every summer there with the people, speaking about the whole nation of China or just China as an entity, uh, might be more difficult, and I don't know how do you think that weighs in on actual people's actual assessments of China, these players? And something that gets lost, I think, is that, and I'll keep hammering this idea that LeBron deals with what's right in front of him, and maybe it's a defect, but in a way, he was standing up for his fellow players. He's standing up, or at least trying to defend the role of the players versus the owners or the people who really should take responsibility. And why aren't you actually doing anything? Which, on a completely different day, on a completely different summer day, would be a issue that society cared about. You know, are the owners unjustly treating or getting over on players? You know, some sort of player versus owner concept there, which we've done. We've been around. We've been dancing around these issues, and sometimes they matter, sometimes they don't. I still, to this day, don't know why it is not a deal. Why nobody gave a shit about the NBA putting out that memo after the first summer or first few months with the big NFL kneeling controversy. I mean, obviously, when it got to be a national issue, and the NBA puts out a memo going into the season saying, "Don't you even think about kneeling." They said they presented the rules that were already in there apparently, and made sure everybody was aware that we will not condone any sort of protesting during the national anthem. We expect you all not only just to be not protest, but to be standing out there. And that nobody batted an eye. And that was because the players were carrying the weight of the NBA's image by speaking out on their own time and in their own space and wearing shirts, you know, in certain in moments, and actually doing things in social media or in their own lives. But the NBA drew a harder line than the NFL was able to draw, because people were still defying the NFL's what they wanted, but nobody crossed the NBA's line. But the point is, this whole line between what the owners are able to do versus what the players are expected to be able to do and what's finable, that's an issue that on another day would be a whole round of podcast topics across the nation, you know. But the fact that this issue with Hong Kong and China and the actual real world global issues happens to be a little bigger than that, we look at that sub issue as not a big deal right now, and really we shouldn't be focused on that. But it's like that, you know, the union rep or something who's always every day fighting for his union, regardless of whatever the issues are beyond in the world. Like my job is to go out and fight for the teachers union. I don't care if there was a tornado or a hurricane or global warming. My issue is getting, pencils in classes. That's what I do. And I feel like that's the hat LeBron really wears, is looking out for those ones right in front of him and right around him. But we went ahead and gave him this worldly hat that includes every issue and everything that even flirts with the concepts of right and wrong, is apparently supposed to be something that he can and should address. And I feel like that was put on him. But everything you said is right, because somebody in his team should have known that. But I appreciate these players that live in their own world sometimes. Some of these, I call them bubble people, right? They don't actually have let input in, right? It works in sports a lot of times. It doesn't work in politics so much. But these people who can just push forward outside of all the criticism and all the negative things that people are saying, and just continue to push forward. There's this level of this ability to shut things off that they have, I believe, and it's helped them get this far. And for LeBron, he's had to have an acute ability to shut things out and not listen to so much of society or people ever since he was 9 or whatever it was. People judging him and laying out how his entire life was supposed to go, and how his friends are all shit and shouldn't be involved in his life. And whatever it is, he's shut so much off that now we're in a position where it looks to me like he's staying focused on what's right in front of him and not really paying attention. And this this is the first time. I don't Has he been on a global issue before? I feel like this all happened so fast, where LeBron became Muhammad Ali 3.0, and I I don't think that he's
Yeah, for
really.
sure. I mean, we're in like the bona fide fourth or fifth act of LeBron's career. You know, he's had a not exactly your traditional 3 act narrative structure to his life. It's been going on so long. He's had such a long story. We're entering act 4 or 5 now, depending on how you break it up. And it's like, it, should he eventually grow into this highly important, globally influential figure is still to be determined. Absolutely, you know, the story is still unwritten, and I think you're right. It is it is what people like me want from him. You know, it's like I said, if I could have some sort of idealistic version of events, it would be one where LeBron stands with Hong Kong, but it's just not that simple. You know, that's just the 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 easiest high moral bar to cross is that one for sure. But it's not exactly easy to picture the negative nuance of the potential consequences that come out of that. It's like there's a couple philosophical concepts that really like work into this whole situation pretty well, and the one that comes to mind for me is just sort of the the nature of trying to be utilitarian and how problematic it is, and that we have no real knowledge of what the true consequences are going to be of our actions. And another one is a sort of a more specific and much more modern concept, is one coined by Peter Singer. Is called effective altruism, and it's what I think of when you talk about LeBron only dealing with the things that are directly in front of him, and that yes, there is something definitely admirable in trying to stick with what you know, because that's in theory what is and what are the areas that you're going to be able to have the most knowledge in and be able to do the most good, right? Because you understand it already. But Peter Singer talks about taking that to the next level and making what you know being more thorough, more expansive, more big picture oriented, and figuring out what the most good you can do with the lowest amount of resources uh, that's possible. I think the example that he gives in the actual work that he wrote to coin this concept was one where he talks about being able to cure preventable diseases that cause people in less developed countries to go blind. I think it's just like basically treating glaucoma, if I'm not mistaken. You know, you could prevent somebody's blindness for about $40, and it's like, well, if I spend $400 a month on keeping people from going blind, then I'm keeping, you know, I'm saving 120 people's vision a year I think that's a lot of good. Where that's hard to do if you never uncover that opportunity by trying to expand your knowledge on areas where you can do good. And I think for somebody like LeBron, it's easier for him to have the opportunities to expand his worldview, because it's something that obviously he either cares about or people think he should care about, or it's because he has all these resources, right? Like he has a whole team of people close to him that have not only his interest in mind, but like his vision's interest in mind. Who he wants to eventually become. They're on the same wavelength with him because they've been riding with him since the beginning, and because he has that sort of team behind him, and because that he seems to be somebody who's thinking in terms of like big picture, the fact that we can even consider it as a possibility for him to be this globally influential person is telling to the ways that he's strived for greatness in ways that those before him never really imagined. That's something that really separates him from the rest of the pack. If you want to talk about the greatest of all time, whatever the fuck that means to you, if you want to talk about off-court stuff factoring into that grand scheme equation, he's definitely absolutely carved a way for him to be the leader in that category. Depending on how your rubric works, maybe that makes him better than Michael Jordan for you in spite of his finals record, because isn't that what this all comes down to, is legacy? LeBron is the most legacy aware athlete of all time, and so for him to fumble on this is might be the off court equivalent of his 2011 summer, where he couldn't figure out a zone defense in the finals.
This is the zone defense of social issues, I guess.
Yeah, social zone defense. Hong Kong versus China.
Oh wow! You said something there, and I really want to. I need an answer. Has anybody asked Michael Jordan what he thinks about all this? I feel like
hell no.
He would
of
give.
Of course not. If they have, nobody's reported on it. You know what I mean? Like, I think he's too busy making a tequila brand with Jeannie Buss and some other people.
Is that true, or is that just?
Yeah, man. No, that is real. Him and they did this whole little story about like how, they conceived the idea while drinking tequila together. It's like, oh yeah, I like tequila. We should make tequila. Just a bunch of fucking billionaires sitting around. Like, oh yeah, that'd be a good idea. That's our story, and that's why we named it whatever the fuck we named it. I don't even remember, but it's something. So it's like Amigos or some shit. Like it's just it's nothing.
Oh, that's such a waste. It's so stupid. Oh god, do you I do. Michael Jordan's had some good ventures. He's, I don't know anybody who hasn't at least encountered the Michael Jordan cologne at least once. And then also, I actually went to a Michael Jordan steakhouse many, many years ago at Grand Central Station in New York City, and it was delicious. One of the first steaks I'd ever have in my life. It was a long time ago. And it always blew my mind. I was like, why is Michael Jordan involved in this? I mean, he was Shaq before Shaq, except like Shaq just does anything. He's the general. He's doing whatever crappy brand comes knocking at his door. But Jordan,
right. Shout out to Damian Lillard for dropping bars and throwing Shaq under the bus for exactly that. He definitely had some sort of general bar and that whole rap beef that went on like a week before all this LeBron China stuff happened. That's a huge part of why people are talking about this too, is that it's just the slowest time in the NBA news cycle, right? Other than fucking August, is the preseason.
Perfect filler.
Like, what are we gonna learn in the preseason? That Zion's not a joke. Okay, cool. That Tyler Hero can hit 3 points and 3-pointers in 4 minutes. Fucking neat. Like LeBron says something that could be interpreted as pro-Chinese government.
Yeah,
that's gonna be the leading story for 3, 4, 5, 6
That's
days.
it. Let's do that.
But as soon as the games get started, tonight on this midnight recording where it's on the eve of the season, and by the time this releases, it's going to be a week into the season. I doubt by the time this releases that this is still going to be a leading story. I think people will still be talking about it.
Right.
It'll still have some buzz behind it, but I don't think I don't think Tucker Carlson's talking about this in a week.
No,
0%
he'll have-
chance. I don't think he talked about it, beyond the first day.
I mean, what did it take? One LeBron pass? You know that nutty pass he dropped a couple days ago, where he was flying to the basket and flipped it over his head.
Suddenly, that's all people were talking about.
Yeah.
Fucking Steve Nash-esque pass.
Yeah. I was like, well,
Looked like an
that's
accident,
the
but
that's
wasn't.
LeBron topic now. That wiped all the he's trending again, but for something completely different. I'm like, okay, well that's it. That's just one pass away. You are one pass away from getting away with it, with whatever. But I'm telling you, I want to know what Michael Jordan has to say about this, because I feel like he'd say something so cold and calculated. Not calculated in terms of artful or precise. It would be about just his business and something about his particular stake in all this, and that's about it. Yeah, he's never had anybody working out his statements on social justice, because he opted out. He just opted out years ago. He just said, you know what, I'm not doing this. I don't do this stuff, and then he was done. And then nobody cares. Nobody cares to ask him. Except,
Yeah, something about Michael Jordan, I guess, intimidates people away from asking him to push his boundaries.
I mean, when he said, what was it, years ago, he said Republicans wear sneakers too. And then that was it.
Yeah, that's right.
That was it.
Yep.
Then he just became not part of the discussion for whatever the discussions are. He did come around a couple years
Which
ago.
is ridiculous, because that's such a good quote. If people were smart, they would keep hunting those quotes.
Oh, this is what I'm saying about a quote on China. He would have something so clean and so cold to say about it all. And we just like, well, that's Jordan. Like, he's an asshole, but he's not pretending to not be an asshole. And then why do people respect that? Why do people respect that enough to leave somebody alone, right? Let's bother the assholes instead of the people who are trying. Stop bothering all the people trying to be good. Shit. Bother the people who don't give a shit.
I guess it's a more interesting story to try to tear good people down than it is to go bad man bad. But I mean, Bad Man Bad has been a leading news story since 2016.
Bad Man
so,
Bad
I mean,
is
what do I
it
know?
is default, right? It's go back to, well, if Bad Man continues to do new bad things, well, you got to keep covering it. But let's give Jordan more opportunities to do new bad things. Come on, guys. I mean, he's out here shutting down my one of three sources of income. My poor, meek clothing line, the brand new Leroy line, had one day in the sun before Michael Jordan himself shut it down. And people need to know that. People need to know that. That's the kind of man he is. And that's what he cares about in life. Yeah, when Randy Brown was broke and was selling his 3 championship rings on eBay, yeah, Michael Jordan tried to get him at a discount. He did. He tried to buy all 3 at a cheaper price. That's what he does. He finds somebody in a tough spot and squeezes them even harder. What kind of guy is that? Shutting down my brand, Leroy brand. If anybody...
That's why you just gotta launch it with all the same designs, just mirrored, and you'll call it Urel.
I'm putting something together. I don't know if it's another website that makes shirts or whatever it is, or I can do it. Just push them back out on Teespring with just an accent mark on the E or something. But it's happening.
Leroy.
Yeah, it's happening. I didn't even I wanted to do this, but I'm just gonna do it now. I'm just gonna put a shirt that just has the full name, Leroy Smith. Black shirt, white text, Leroy Smith. That's it. This is it. I'm owning the name. If Michael Jordan can go out and do a whole fake campaign with some other man's name, I can do it too. It's in the public domain. Let's do it. Take me to court, Mike. Come on, Mike. Take me to court. I'm sure there's That wants this smoke.
And this is the day that Emio ended his life financially.
And that was the
This was the last mistake he
Yeah.
ever made. And I never heard from him again.
And you've got it right here on the midnight edition, the 3 a.m. edition that went way too long. It's been a pleasure speaking to you, very much so.
Oh yeah. As
Put this
usual.
out. Forget
As
the
always, for sure.
moratorium, the week long. Put it out as early as you want. I don't care. We didn't say that much. I mean, if you want,
yeah,
if you
I'll
ever want,
put it out, in a week.
you want
It's
evergreen
fine.
topics or topics that are not dependent on the clock, I've got plenty of stuff to talk about. This is a.
Oh,
I have an
That's,
idea.
you're the king of everything evergreen.
Thank you. I have an idea. I don't have any other really means to get this idea. I was going to tweet it, but Twitter's just kind of 12 people are going to say, "Hey, nice," and then that's it. But if you can find a place for this, did you read how Suge Knight signed his life rights away to Ray J? Now that he's in prison, Suge Knight, he signed his life rights away to Ray J. Did you hear about that?
No, I'm completely uninformed on this.
Yeah, Ray J is a very smart businessman, by the way. He has made a lot of money, and I recently found.
Oh yeah, man. Raycon ads are inescapable.
Let me tell you, I didn't even realize those were his, and I mean, I did. When I did, I said, "Well, look at that. There you go, Ray J. Him and he's got these little bikes that he sells and some other crap." Anyway, point is, he now owns the Suge Wright identity, which is exactly what I'm talking about with Leroy Smith. The fact that that Suge Knight can do that, sign the rights to his story, his name and his life to some other person in the hopes that he can make some money off of it while Suge's in jail. That is the exact model that I'm expecting out of this Leroy Smith situation. I believe that Michael Jordan purchased Leroy Smith's life rights. And that's exactly why Leroy Smith no longer goes by Leroy Smith, because legally he goes by the name Harvest Smith now, which was his middle name, but it now is in his first name in all legal documents. Harvest Smith. There technically is no Leroy Smith anymore on this earth, except in Michael Jordan's advertising budget. So that's what I think. And with that, on a side note, Ray J, first thing Ray J should do is start a Suge Fest. You know how they have like Santa Claus Fest or whatever it is, or when all the people dress up as Santa Claus or Santa Con and stuff like that? Everybody.
Of course, yeah. SantaCon's huge.
Yeah, Suge Con, where every big ass, light skinned guy with a beard can show up and do the same shit that they do at Santa Con. Suge Con. There are enough, and there's a couple of meanings in Suge Con too, but I feel like there's enough guys that look like that guy or could dress up as him where it would be so much fun. And also, it's just the idea that Suge himself, sure, they should have a movie. Suge should have a movie, but he's had a movie. The Suge character has been played in. There was a Tupac movie. There was a Suge character in that. There was a Biggie movie. There was a Suge character in that. The NWA movie had a Suge character in that. And what's funny is, in most of them, it's the same guy who plays Suge in all those movies. So, if they make a Suge movie, I hope that guy gets the role. But they've already kind of made it, which has always been kind of astonishing to me. He's been a central figure in all those stories, and he doesn't have his own movie. Suge Khan needs to be a thing. Ray J, if you're listening to the Hustle Points podcast, I'll take like 10% of the door. That's all. All right, man.
Yeah. I know I got the eyes and ears of Ray J. We've been emailing.
You might, man. You might. Put it out there. And then the life rights idea. Do you think? Let me just ask you this. I need your on the record opinion of this, and then I will let you go. I promise. Do you believe, or do you think that that's actually something that happened? Do you think somebody actually had any input in taking my line down, or is this just more wishful storytelling or lucky coincidental storytelling?
Mm-hmm.
What do you really think?
Honestly, kind of a coin flip.
Yeah.
I'm on like 51% that seems like it's what happened, because I think I'm just more inclined to believe it because it's more fun that way.
Right.
But it's not like it was in any way overtly some sort of like Nike property ripoff in any kind of distinguishable way, unless this very elaborate storyline that informs it. And it wasn't until after you put out that messaging. It was like, haha, I'm using your shit,
Yeah.
that it vanished or whatever. So I'm more inclined to believe that there is some legitimate Nike involvement.
Okay, good.
But
Good.
it's only slightly.
Good.
It's only slightly. I would hedge this bet hard.
Okay.
Speaking of hedging bets, good God, I made the worst hedge bet on. I've never gambled in my fucking life, so naturally I made a fucking rookie mistake. But I was filling out my bet slip for who's gonna win the championship this year, and I meant to hedge on breaking even by hedging on the Clippers, and I put it on the Lakers on accident. So just read Los Angeles and got it mixed up. Big mistake. The difference is like I would have like made $10 if the Clippers win the championship,
Right.
but I'm only gonna like lose $12 if the Lakers win the championship.
What were their
Whatever.
odds? Where were the Lakers? What are their odds?
I got in at plus 360,
Ah.
and so, but I put down like 210 total across like 7 or 8 bets. But the big money's on the Sixers at plus 700.
Oh, to win it all. Ah. Yeah. I was thinking about doing something like that. That's not bad. Not bad.
I think you got like negative 2 hours to put in those bets if you want. I think they close today.
I like my little prop
You know,
bets.
after the midnight threshold was crossed on this recording here.
The prop bets are where the little in game. That's where I've unfortunately blown money, other than in actual casinos playing blackjack. I've probably said this on a video, but the easiest way to make some quick cash was a prop bet that they used to offer. It was which team at every game, which team will score first. And a couple of years back, I used to bet every single game, like just a few bucks, $10 or whatever it is, on the Clippers, because it was, unless somebody blew the layup, it was almost a regular occurrence that they came out of the gate, because DeAndre Jordan would always win the tip, and it would always go right to Chris Paul, and it would end up in some sort of fast break situation that was back in Lob City prime Lob City days. And this prop bet used to just hang out there every game. Who's going to score first? Well, I know who's going to win the tip, and I know these people are gearing up to go right to the rim. So I'm looking for my next prop bet, my next sure thing like that. But if they offer those ones, look for those type of things, So which team is always, which person always wins the tip? And if that's the case, then you already got a good bet on your hands. And those ones usually, there's no, the line's usually even on those anyway. So you're not, you put your money up, you win your money.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the kind of stuff you got to look
no
for.
No one's tracking the rate of first basket scored in the game.
Right. So
Man.
even they have, it's probably different now, but they had like who would score the first three, that kind of stuff. I know those ones those are a little more worked out at this point. But
yeah, I'm gonna be doing a lot more of that sort of involved keeping up with the league through little gamified things like gambling and fantasy and stuff like that. I don't really do fantasy for real. I've never played fantasy basketball, but I am playing in the Fast Break Breakfast NBA podcast. I shop. That's International Stackhouse of Pancakes. Negative fantasy draft. Or not draft, but the league. But yeah, you get credit for playing bad players.
oh wow, that sounds fun.
Yeah, like Giannis scored like a negative 14,000 points last year. But like that you get points for turnovers, you get points for minutes played, you get points for missed shots.
Oh,
you get
that's
points
fun.
For fouling out, but you get negative points for points made and assists and steals and blocks and rebounds. So naturally, my first round pick was starting Grizzlies shooting guard Dylan Brooks.
Glad you put your research into that. That was good.
Right. All right,
Thank you, man.
Well, it's been a lot of fun. We'll do this again sometime, I'm sure.
All right, boss. Put it out whenever you want. Seriously. Not on my behalf. I mean, obviously that other one you have, I'm looking forward to hearing that other one you have. But yeah, there's no hold on this. All right, man. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. Like always, this is clearly the only podcast that knows basketball. Nobody else does.
Hashtag YCDKB. Before you go, I gotta let you know, I got beef with you, man.
Ah!
Chris Hessen, or Hessian, however you pronounce his last name. The man who's worked on music in your videos before. He lives in the same city as me now.
I've heard.
And I've hung out with him a few times, and he showed me this video that you made but did not publish. And I gotta tell you, it was like the perfect NBA storyteller video for all of my opinions, and I'm angry that you did not finish it. It was. I say angry. I'm definitely stretching the meaning of.
No. I need it. I need that. I need it. You know what? Done. I know. It just got stuck. It got caught in the middle. It was stuck in between a couple of other things, and it
explains the whole YCDKB movement. It ends with like your hot takes that are now like NBA storyteller staples. Yeah. Like, man, you clearly don't know basketball, and hot takes are like two of my jazzes. Are there multiple jazzes?
Yeah.
They don't call the Utah Jazz players a member of the Jazzes. So. But you see what I'm trying to get across here. It was a good video.
You got through that.
You just need to finish it, man. It's a good
you know what?
one.
I need this. It's happening. I know the video. I know exactly where it is too. I'm so glad. All these black market NBA storyteller videos that you're seeing.
Yeah, man, I'm deep in the lore.
Oh, that's great. All right. Yeah, done. It's happening.
Yeah.
You heard it here. All right, man. Thank you so much.
All right.
I'm absolutely releasing that one.
Yeah, should be a layup for you. From what I saw, it was like 95%.
Yeah. Oh, yes, it was. Yes. All right, man. Thank you, sir.
See you later, man.